What's going on, FA Nation? Justin Fensterman, Jon and Impemba here for another edition of Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. Jon, how's everything going? Let's get the what's up, what's going on out of the way, because tonight I'm about to kick your ass in the Alarm After Hours Fantasy Football Listener League Draft, and I just can't wait, buddy.
Yeah, it's a big day. Like you said, we do have the Listener League later on. It's going to be my third draft of the day, so I'll be prepared, Justin. I'm going to get all those reps in ahead of time and know where maybe to zig when everybody else is zagging in these draft boards.
Yes, and it's still a big time of drafts, Jon. It's not only tonight and tomorrow, but also people tend to draft as well, start in week one. Some people may be a little late to the party, could start their seasons week two. So, hey, you can still get on board, and that's why you need the living draft guide that we have on fantasyalarm.com. Jon, let me talk to you about something that's bothering me, though. Is that okay?
Yeah. You know what? This isn't a therapy table, but, I mean, if you got something on your mind, let's listen to it.
Okay, Jon. So, I apologize that I didn't notice this before. But, Jon, for weeks, we've been telling everybody that you want to get to your draft room on whatever site you play on ahead of time for your fantasy football drafts. Any fantasy sport. You want to get there ahead of time so you can put your queue together, so you can get ready. You don't have any tech issues, which seem to happen more often than not, more often than you would think. And so, Jon, I have been preaching to everyone, get to your draft room 30 minutes before, get there 40 minutes before, just to make sure everything works correctly. Jon, if you play on Yahoo, though, the draft room doesn't open up until 15 minutes before the draft. That's not enough time.
Yeah,
issues are going to happen, man. And I noticed this, and then I'm like, wait a minute. This is the second draft where the draft room opens 15 minutes. That is not enough time, man. Tech issues are going to happen. Everyone's drafting right now. I'm guessing that's why Yahoo did it this way, so that they weren't wasting whatever in the bandwidth or whatever on open draft rooms for 45 minutes before. But I think that's crucial, man. This is technology we're talking about.
Were you impacted by Yahoo's issues yesterday? Is that what happened? Because they did send out a tweet saying that they did have some issues with their draft rooms, and if you had a draft that you had to reschedule tonight, you could message them privately, and they would manually create these draft rooms for those leagues, because otherwise, people who went into their draft rooms, if they had problems, they weren't able to reschedule their draft for that night. They weren't out. There were no times available for this day. They had to move it out a couple of days, and obviously, it's hard enough, as you know, as a league commissioner, to get everybody to agree on a draft day as it is. Never mind going into your draft and then finding out that the site itself had issues. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be open a little bit earlier. I think, personally, once the draft order is set, the room should be open. I mean, that's how other leagues that I've been a part of are. I know that's how the best ball leagues are that I do over on Best Ball 10s. Once the draft room is filled, the draft order is set immediately, and you can go right into the draft room. Fantrax, same way. So I agree. I don't know why they have to be sort of a lock on these draft rooms if everything's already finalized.
Right, and it'll help commissioners too, by the way, if you don't wait till the last second to enter the draft room. I'm a commissioner where I'm going to text you, and I'm going to text you again and again and again until you show up. I shouldn't be sweating 3 people showing up with a minute to go before the draft. I know everyone likes to be fashionably late, but don't do that to your commissioner. Fashionably late is you enter for the first time 5 minutes before. That's fashionably late. You should be making sure, because I had this happen, Jon, a couple years ago, where someone waited till the last second to enter the auction, and you know how it is where you can't really have anyone auto auctioning. It ruins the entire auction. I had someone say they can't log in about a minute before we were supposed to go live with the auction, and I'm sitting there being like, where were you? I gave you a 30-minute warning that this auction's happening, and it was because he couldn't get hooked into it on Chrome. He had to do Safari or Firefox, one of the other internets that he has. So that right there, the troubleshooting, 15 minutes is not enough time, man. I work somewhat in technology in the radio world. 15 minutes is not enough time.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's not enough time. And as you mentioned, it doesn't give anybody time, like you said, if something pops up and someone's late or whatever, it doesn't give everybody time to get into the draft room. So it's tough time crunch there.
Yeah, and so that right there, for a strategy for your drafts over the next few nights, you must be writing down your draft targets on a piece of paper if that draft room isn't going to open until 15 minutes before. You have to do everything freehand. I know it's not cool. I know it's not on the computer. I know it's not really technology. It's very old school, but it's very, very effective. And that's why when I was saying before, write your list, now I feel like it's a prerequisite to the draft. You must write your list of draft targets down, different cues, different default rankings on different sites. So that's why you need to be organized, because it's going to take to properly organize more than 15, or really once you get in there, 13 minutes before draft time. I was shocked to see that, John. I was shocked, but I wasn't shocked. But I saw that, and I just had to urge everyone in FA Nation that you must start preparing before that draft room opens. Have your list of targets ready early, middle, and late.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Let's talk about auctions, though, John, because this is the last time we're going to be talking about auctions for a while. I mean, you and I love auctions very much. Hopefully. I don't know what that means, John. But, hey, you know what? In basketball, you know what? We'll be talking about auctions for there. We'll definitely sneak in a little bit of coverage. Football auctions, though, again, they really teach you how to properly value players. Doing one, even if you don't like it, it'll make you a better fantasy player. And, John, when I say teach you how to value players, the receiver position is definitely one of them. But before we get to some of the dollar value players I've been noticing in my casual leagues, my 12-team auctions, where it just shows, again, how you can really still get very productive players for just $1. John, what are some of the biggest things that you always remember and tell yourself when entering an auction?
Yeah, I mean, like we've always said, it's about setting price points for players so you don't end up overextending yourself. And then, because if you end up overextending yourself on a player, even if it's by $5, it can eventually throw off guys that you had targeted maybe late for $2 or $1 or so. So getting that levels of tiers of where you're willing to spend on certain players is, to me, the biggest key to an entire successful auction. Not to waste your budget on things, not to getting into bidding wars, know when to cut the cord on guys, and you can set yourself up nicely.
Yes, and some of the things you have to remember, and you can look at snake draft grids as well, so you can get yourself a little bit started with making your tiers. You have to remember that there are going to be some players, because of the auction bidding and the flow of it, there are going to be some players that get away under the rug for cheap. And one of them, John, and this is what I'm kicking myself from in an auction I did last night, Nick Chubb was there at 38, and at the time, I didn't have a running back. And I thought about going in. I feel like I should have hit the button. I don't know if I would have gotten him at 39, but he went for 38. And that right there is a great value because, again, we've been seeing Nick Chubb in snake drafts go at the end of the first round. 38, not to pay $40. That right there just shows the range of the running back position when it comes to spending.
And it's not only that, like you said, the range when it comes to it, but there's also, because there's such a premium at running backs, people feel inclined to spend more than maybe value is on certain players. So that's why I said to you, you got to be willing to set certain limits on guys on how much you're going to spend, or else you could find yourself bidding up and spending too much on players because you feel like you need this position.
Yeah, a few things that you should remember when you're in your auctions, and even snake drafts too, this applies as well. And this is something I do. Utilize your downtime to your advantage. If, let's say, you're picking on one of the ends, you make your 2 picks in a snake draft, or you all of a sudden in your auction, you bought a few players, and now you're kind of just sitting there waiting because your budget has dropped significantly, and you have your core players, so you're sitting there waiting. Don't just be sitting there watching TV or surfing on the web. Literally start scanning through other teams to see what they're going to be looking for. That way you can start planning on who you're putting up for nomination next. And John, that's something I think that goes overlooked. And I wrote about it in an article in our draft guide. But the whole nomination process is a strategy in itself. I don't nominate players early on that I want. I nominate players that I don't want, especially at the start, to get money off the table. And I'm not necessarily one that holds the hammer, and we'll talk about that, who looks to be that person that hasn't spent anything until everybody else did. But I like getting money off the table early. I like getting people spending. I don't want people tentative, because then there are going to be certain players that I don't like that are going to go for cheaper. And then because of that, out of desperation, it's going to cause me to overspend. These are all things that happen in your mind during an auction, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the nomination process. I like to go ahead and throw guys out there that have a lot of helium to their name at the point that maybe I'm not too highly on. We talked about this before, guys like Hayden Hurst, who I am not particularly high on, but I know a lot of people are high on. You go ahead and throw him out there. Maybe you get somebody to spend $10, $12 on him all of a sudden, and now you're okay with that money being off the board because it wasn't money you planned on spending anyways, So that strategy makes a lot of sense. And then, like you said, surfing other people's rosters. If you know someone's coming up and they don't have any wide receivers or running back depth, you go ahead and you throw a below average guy out there. Maybe they start to panic, being like, oh man, another opportunity where a running back's going to come off the board. I need to strike now. So like you said, they're both in your draft guide article, but both of them very strong strategies when it comes to nominating players.
Yeah, and you could start to tell whether certain league mates are nominating players that they want or don't want. And this leads to our next lesson, John. And this is where we're going to bring your AA Arn Anderson enforcer skills to the test, because I've seen it happen before, and it was very impressive. Let me just tell you, it was very impressive being in an auction with you recently. And that's how to be an auction enforcer. Bullying is bad. We're not about that. But driving up the price on certain players that you know that your friends and league mates want, that's a strategy in itself, so that you could get some of the players later on that you want in your auction. You want someone who I've been seeing go late. John, I've been in multiple auctions, and I've noticed that someone like a Calvin Ridley has gone late multiple times. That is a darling that everybody seems to love. So I know that if I really want Calvin Ridley, I'm going to have to get them spending on some of the other guys like Cooper Kupp being drafted around there. That way, I don't have as much competition when it comes to bidding on Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, it's not only that. It goes a lot more to roster awareness, like we mentioned before. If you see a guy, and this happened in one of our auction drafts that we did together, who maybe had Dalvin Cook, and they were all of a sudden bidding on Alexander Mattison. Well, you know why they're bidding on Alexander Mattison, so make them pay for it. It seems like, oftentimes the guys in those situations may not be willing to let go of the handcuffs that they have on their team. And if you have that understanding of that player, you can bid them up $1 every time until you decide to pull the cord on them, and next they're stuck paying more than they wanted to.
Right. Now, something I experienced last night in an auction that I was actually able to not use to my advantage, but get the person to spend a little bit more, was during the early part of the bidding, someone tries to sneak in, John, a dollar value player, and that's where I'm just shaking my head. You're clearly putting Deshaun Jackson up there with an injured receiving core, and you're expecting him to slide by for $1. That's not happening, and I know that you want him. So I'm going to make you pay a few extra dollars, and I did that. And that's how I was able to use my enforcer skills to my advantage, because, John, you never want it to blow up in your face, especially for a high dollar amount. It's not a fun game having to drive a price up in the 40s, John.
No, not that high. And again, going back to the auction that you and I had done together, I got caught with David Montgomery. It wasn't a play that I wanted. He didn't end up costing me an arm and a leg like that. I think it was like $22 or $23. It just wasn't a player that I wanted, but somebody was bidding up on it. It's like, all right, let's see if I can get him to spend an extra $1 on a guy I'm not too high on. And then they stopped bidding on them, and I got the player. I'll live with it. Starting running back, we'll see what happens there. But those are definitely the dangers of bidding up. But like you said, if you find yourself now in a bidding competition where you're going up to $40 or $45 and it's not really somebody you want, why are you in there at that point?
Right. Getting into a bad bidding war for auctions is like for Snake writing all the crap that you're talking and trash talking on the message board with the chat, because that's where I think, and we've seen it in industry drafts with Zooms, that once all of a sudden these shows go over best available, it raises awareness to certain players who would have otherwise been sleepers. That's the problem. It changes, John, the flow of the draft. And that's why I urge everybody, especially when it comes to focusing on their snake drafts too, it's if you're going to talk that much trash, you're going to be the chatty Cathy of the draft chat, you better be organized and not screwing up any picks. And most likely, you're giving away a strategy or two the more you talk. That's why, unless there's an issue, especially if I'm the commissioner, I'm going to stay silent for the most part. Maybe respond with, John, you've talked to me on chat before with an LOL with a bunch of Z's after it. Maybe I respond like that. But the more I talk about players and bring up names, my strategy is going to be given away, and yours will too.
Yeah, and I think there has to be a little bit of gamemanship played as well. It's part of the act. If you're going to be a vocal person, maybe you could use that to your advantage. Lead it into guys that maybe you aren't as high on, or vice versa, and try to, like I said, swerve the group, the draft room that you're with.
Yes. Now, John, let's talk about being in a bidding war, because there's no formula to win a bidding war. There are just certain tactics that you could do to stun your opponent in said bidding war. One of the ones that I do, one of my biggest strategies when in a bidding war, especially when you're going dollar for dollar, and especially if it's a target of yours, if it's a draft target, let's just say Calvin Ridley, bring him back up there. I have enough money and now I'm bidding against someone. We're going dollar for dollar, me and John. Oh, all of a sudden, I'm going to raise it $2. Whoa. The mental process stops. He just raised it $2. I'm telling you, that has happened, and I've seen the hesitation. I watch for how quickly the opponent will throw it back to me. And when I start to see that process slow down, I know that their mind is starting to work. And with that, I am starting to get a little bit of leverage in that regard. And John, that's why I say when you're going one for one and you're in a pattern like that, break up the pattern.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this again goes to sort of the point I was saying earlier about setting limits for players, because you know what your max bid will be on this select player or position. And it does allow you, when you're in those bidding wars, to play those kind of games. I've done the same thing where I bid up as much as $5. We're going one for one. I'm like, all right, this guy's still at a good value. Even if I bid up 5, sure, maybe it's an overspend if they would have stopped at 3, but 5 is a big number. And people do have sort of mental blocks when it comes to 0s and 5s, it seems like, in drafts and bidding, the 50 to 55, 60, those numbers people hate sort of going over for whatever reason. So if we're up in a bidding spot and, it was 51, I go 55, now they may stop right there. They're like, whoa, never mind. This, who knows how high they're going to go at that point,
Very true, and it's a good strategy to implore once in a while. If you start going after player, they're going to recognize your pattern, and I'm going to know that you want that player. If you get 2 guys, let's just say, where you're up in the bid by $5 once or even twice because you like the value, and I know you want that player, unless you really fool me and give me a game of trickery, I'm likely going to nab you the next time that happens. Even after 1, I normally have a 1-strike policy, John, because patterns are so hard to find. Normally they happen in 2s and 3s max when it comes to people getting their players. For instance, something that you'll see 1 or 2 of your league mates not spend any money because they're going to think the strategy of waiting for everybody else to spend and then staying with their $200 budget for half the auction, they're going to be able to control the game. And that's not true, because then you're going to get a jerk like me who recognizes that you have not spent. So what I'm going to do is when you start bringing up those players that you want, and I'm seeing your bidding become more aggressive because I'm paying attention, because that's how you utilize your time, then I'm going to start raising the price on you. For instance, John, a good example, someone I've seen that's taken, let's just say, at the end of a tier of players, James Conner. Someone wants to wait halfway through the auction, want to make James Conner their first running back that they're buying, and I see that, I'm going to drive up that price. Okay, James Conner, you want to go in the 30s? Sure, let's go in the 30s. You want to go in the late 30s? Sure, I will play that game as well, and I will make you spend. And other people will recognize it too. Holding the hammer is not that smart because other people have high max bids. That's what it's about, making sure you have a very high max bid so that if a target comes up and you've spent, you can still spend on that target as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, it's a budget management. Again, you wrote it up in your draft guide article, but there are certain sort of rules that you certainly need to abide by in your auctions, and understanding budget, understanding draft board, and understanding your tier system are core principles to me when I go in there.
You have to, and you have to always account for that variable change, because you're not going to see as much of a pattern when it comes to auctions as you will snake drafts. Position runs are very different, not as noticed. They are brought up a little bit, and then you're like, okay, especially when some of those dollar value quarterbacks are brought up early, and all of a sudden right away, they definitely had the time to look at my roster like, oh, here's Michael Thomas. Let me make him spend another $1. I ended up having to spend $7 on him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit overpay. I think he's probably going for, 3 or 4, I think, in most leagues. So, in QB, I found people are really waiting on the quarterback position, obviously outside of of the Mahomes-Jackson group. But I mean, like you said, if you get the double points, it's totally worth it. Get 12 points or 10 points if that's the kind of league you're in. Every time he throws a touchdown pass to Thomas isn't the worst.
Yes. Now, something else I'll say, I don't want to give everything away from the Draft Guide article. One more thing I will say, there is a strategy when it comes to seeing and going into different decades when you're bidding, especially in a bidding war. So get that 9 bid. What that is at the end of every decade, get the 9, 39, 49, even 59 if you're going for one of the top running backs, because people don't like to go into that new decade. They don't want to be the one to break the seal on the new decade. I've seen it a ton of times. If you're going up and the bid is 65, back to you 66, and then they go to 67, just go to 69 if you want that player. If you really do. If it's Barkley or McCaffrey and you really want, go to 69. That's what you do. Because then there's going to be hesitation. Do I really want to go to 70? Do I really want to make wow, at the end of the day, I spent 70? There will be that hesitation, John.
It's funny because, if you do sort of crack that seal, the bidding does keep going. It's not like, there's a hesitation at 69, someone goes to 70, and then next thing you know, more people are bidding at 71, 72. It's like, whoa, all right, everybody's now willing to spend the extra dollar because, hey, why not? We're already here.
It's contagious, bro. Dude, here's an example. You mentioned the quarterbacks, by the way. Here's something that happened to me last night. I had Russell Wilson for $8, and at the last possible second, someone bid up to 9, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's Russell Wilson. Ended up going for 14. I was literally a half second away from getting him at 8, and then people woke up.
Yeah, I never truly, I guess I understand it, but I hate it. The person who will purposely wait the whole clock to do the $1 bid at the last second. Auction drafts take long enough. If you know you're comfortable bidding the next dollar, don't waste everybody's 10 seconds or whatever the clock is, on the 0 bid waiting for it to go down, just so you can get your last second bid in and start it over again. Just bid until you don't want to bid anymore. That's my gripe.
Yep. And by the way, for those that say, oh, auctions take longer than snake drafts, well, here's how you make them shorter. When you're putting up players, the high caliber players that you're seeing go in the first few rounds in your snake drafts, don't put up Christian McCaffrey for $1. Put him up there for $45 and take it from there. Now, don't do that with players you're unsure about with value. Don't take DK Metcalf and put him there automatically at $30. No, let's calm down a little bit. You want to put him at 5, go for it. But someone like a Barkley or a Zeke, Kamara, I mean, John, that's what you do. And it really does speed up the draft because, and also, by the way, be ready to nominate your player as well. No reason you should be taking an average of 18 seconds to pick a player to nominate. You should know the next 3 players you're planning on nominating with your strategy, especially if you're imploring a player you don't like. That should be easy pickings for you. Yeah,
exactly. And I actually do what you mentioned. If a guy starts somebody out there and a McCaffrey and he's at $1, if my next bid's 45. I'm the one that just bumps it up to a realistic price point. Even that's a little bit obviously too low for a guy that goes around $60. But yeah, I'm immediately pushing the price, letting everybody know, all right, we're not going to $1 bid up for the next 20 minutes here. Let's get this going.
Yep. Also, I'll say this too, something I've noticed a few times. If Barkley or McCaffrey, this is like a new strategy, John. Barkley or McCaffrey is the first player brought up. Watch how the spending is, and if the spending is very, very slow and you're in the, let's just say, 61, 62 range, go after that player. Because then the next one's probably going higher than that because everyone will be like, I can't believe X person just got Saquon for $62. And then they're going to want McCaffrey for 70, and people are going to want to try to get him in the 60s. So if you're, and this is right at the start because, John, people are either going to be almost too eager to bid with that first player, or they're going to be a little hesitant and be telling themselves, okay, this is just the first player. We have a whole bunch of players. So you have to read that right away from player 1.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100% on that one.
Yes. Now let's talk about a couple of players you could get at the end of your auctions for around $1, John, because there's more value, especially in the tight end and receiver position, even quarterback position, than people think. I mean, there have been leagues where I mentioned I got Drew Brees for $7. In another league, I got Matt Ryan for $1. That's it. Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan for $1?
I got Matt Ryan for $1.
Wow, you should be sending everybody in that league a fruit basket for the holidays. That's maybe a nice Jello mold because that's quite a gift.
Well, how about this one, John? If he's Anthony Miller for $1, I was in a league. I told you about this on Alarm After Hours. I was in a league with industry analysts, and I was shocked that I got Anthony Miller for $1.
Yeah, I mean, again, given the hype that he's had at this camp and how he finished last year, I expected maybe $3 to $5 for an Anthony Miller.
Right, and that's how it's going to be in a lot of auctions, but things change. Now, guys that are generally going for $1 that I'm interested in, I'm going to give two, John, right away. Sure. And these are guys that we've talked about recently together. One of them is Larry Fitzgerald, and these are the same reasons I've told you on the radio. I'm going to tell you right now. Kyler Murray is supposed to take that next step. It's not all going to go to Hopkins, and I know fresh off his extension, that doesn't mean it's all going to Hopkins. Larry Fitzgerald has been one of the most durable players. He's done it for 16 years, hasn't missed more than 3 games, still got over 100 targets, 75 receptions. We're talking $1 here. I feel like Larry Fitzgerald, John, is the type of player that if he couldn't perform at his high of a level to meet his expectations, he wouldn't try to just go until he breaks down. He would just retire.
Yeah, another 100 targets last year. I mean, he came back. He's obviously no longer in a conversation as their top receiving option. They have DeAndre Hopkins that they just gave a big extension to. So I don't hate Larry Fitzgerald there, but I am expecting a little, decrease in production here. Maybe there's less focus on him now because of Hopkins, and maybe, when they get in the red zone area where he is usually pretty solid, it can lead to more touchdowns. But I don't hate it for $1. Again, you're getting exposure to a very pass-happy offense there. So it's a good $1 pick.
That's what you do. And if you're not sure about drafting Kyler, and I don't have a single share of him, okay, then I'm going to get a cheaper share or two of that offense. And I definitely have a team with one. I have 1 or 2 with Kirk. I've got 1 with Hopkins. And then I've got a few now with Fitzgerald. So that's how you handle it if you're unsure about a quarterback. But pass-happy offense, like you mentioned. The other $1 value receiver that I like at the end, and this is someone that got 50 targets last year, Steven Sims. Number 2 options on the Washington football team. Yeah. Why not? It's going to happen again. It's not going to be all McLaurin. And again, if he could lift up that target share a little bit, he could get maybe, I don't know, John, 70 at that targets. I mean, come on. That's good value for $1.
Yeah. They really don't have another receiving target on that team. I mean, or they're obviously expecting Gibson to, be a pass catching back in a hybrid role there. But outside of McLaurin, they really have nothing else. So I'm a big proponent of Sims as well. I grabbed them in a handful of leagues, including the draft I did today, the Fantasy Joe's the Pros league that we drafted. Got him, I think it was like the 13th or so round. We ended up taking Sims in that 14-team league. So I'm right with you there. $1 pick that I would have liked to draft, and this wasn't an auction draft that I did, but someone that you and I have talked a lot about, including on Alarm After Hours the other day, is Randall Cobb. Again, another guy that you're getting at the very end of drafts. I've seen him go undrafted, and I understand.
What?
Undrafted.
What? 10-team leagues?
No, 12-team leagues. I've seen him go undrafted.
Get out of here.
Swear to God, yeah. And I understand. People are like Fuller and people like Cooks, and they think that offense, maybe they're down on it altogether. But we're talking about Cobb, who's going to move into the slot, coming off a season where he had 800 yards and 50 catches in Dallas, and he's going to a receiver group that is basically made of glass around him. You look at the other receivers on that team, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Kiki Kute have all been injured throughout their careers, especially recently. They've all had injury problems. There could be legitimate weeks this season where Randall Cobb is like the number 1 receiver on that team. So either way, we've heard a lot of good things out of camp about Cobb being there. We know Watson sort of likes to have those underneath routes where I think he's going to rely on Cobb and his veteran presence, while we have Cooks and Fuller much more the downfield type receivers. So I think Cobb is probably in no less shape than he was last year. If he puts up another 50 and 800, I wouldn't blink an eye at it.
I'm still shocked that you said he went undrafted.
I've seen him go undrafted. Yeah,
he shouldn't be going undrafted.
People are taking upside plays over him. He's, if you're getting to the end of your draft, people are looking at, Laviska Shenault or Randall Cobb, who currently are sort of at similar, ADPs, and maybe they're more intrigued by Shenault's upside than Cobb, who they look at as like, well, he's the number 3. What kind of upside?
I mean, let's be real. I mean, who are you more intrigued by? Curtis Samuel or Randall Cobb. I feel like it's the no-brainer for me.
It should, yeah. I would take Cobb in that situation too.
Yeah.
See, Samuel is a guy that got a lot of early camp hype, but he's really died down of late. And I'm not big on Teddy Bridgewater, anyways. He's never proven to be a really good downfield passer. And while Samuel isn't necessarily going to be the downfield guy, he's more of the screen, quick out type receiver there. I don't know about that passing offense.
What about from Jacksonville, James Robinson and Devon Ozigbo? What about them? Because I've seen them go for $1.
I don't know if you can get them for $1 anymore because people know that they're the guys to go. I think that they're going to cost you probably $3 or $4. Same thing with Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson might even start costing you more, maybe 6 or 7 at this point.
Chris Thompson in my auction last night, and again, 12-teamer casual league, Chris Thompson went for a few more dollars. Both Robinson and Ozigbo went for $1.
Yeah, I feel like as we get closer with that news coming out, especially the Robinson's been all over Twitter, right? If you're anybody that's buying into hypes, I don't know if you'd get them for $1, but like you said, those guys just went for $1. So, maybe my opinion is off a little bit. I feel like they would cost you at least $3 by now.
One more. What about for $1? I almost gave it $2. What about Brian Edwards? Another hype guy.
Yeah, I wonder if you can get him for $1 anymore either now that Tyrell Williams is out. Now, he was the guy that we were getting for $1. He was the guy I was taking in the last round of drafts because I was kind of high on him initially anyway, sort of knowing that they really lacked other real pass catchers on that offense. He was getting a lot of good camp hype. Tyrell Williams was coming off the injury. They only had Hunter Renfrow. You have Darren Waller at tight end. Are we trusting Nelson Aguilar now all of a sudden? No. And Henry Ruggs, of course, is their number 1 pick. So he factored in anyway. So I was intrigued by Brian Edwards. But now that we know he's likely starting on the outside week 1, I think he's probably going to cost you more than $1 at this point.
Yeah, I got him again. 12-team league, I got him for $1 last night. So
that's a great play.
Yeah,
I love that a lot.
I'll take it. And again, that's just shows right there. Just looking at some of the other receivers, just to give you a range. John Brown went for $2. Lazard went for $2. Even Wentz went for $2. The point is, there are a lot of good values that you can get for $1 or $2. So don't be tentative when it comes to your spending early on. Don't crush yourself by getting 3 of the top players and then being just at dollar days. Have a little bit more balance than that. But there is value at that $2 value area, John. And that's why I tell everyone, even if you don't like it, play in at least one auction in your fantasy football career, John, right?
Hey, man, I like it.
He's Jon Impemba. I am Justin Fensterman. Catch John on Twitter at jimpemba777. Me at Fensty Sports. You can catch Alarm After Hours on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio tonight, 1 a.m. Eastern. Me and Adam Ronas still getting you ready for your fantasy football drafts. There's still time, and we are going to continue, as the family should, helping you always dominate because there is no other option. We just win.